I just learned, that's what I said, yeah. But I just learned last week that she doesn't keep a calendar. I said, how do you live? She's president of like 10 organizations.
If something is not on my calendar, I don't go. Like, I live and die by what makes it on there.
He has the last lot. It's beautiful, and he was the first one to buy it.
Okay, but I'm asking. I'm pleading, I'm on my knees.
He's the one that
Okay,
has it. So.
okay.
How's Gabe this evening?
I'm well. How are you guys?
I am good. Miss Nedra.
I want it. Did you hear that?
It's not for sale.
So Gabe,
It's not done.
you're gonna hire out as a flooring expert now?
No. That's why my brother came.
So you're about a general contractor at this point.
Elias was here so that I did not have to be a foreigner. He got me started and all.
I need to have somebody do what his brother did with him on my basement for the
Here. Oh, man.
tile.
Okay, I'm gonna have to use my phone.
Yes. And they make some really nice little ones.
I did.
Got down there because after this last spring, we have some leaves.
Where are my copies of the presentations?
Water out, we were back in the mud water. We have a sump pump that's just one place, it's not necessarily the low spot. I think it might have been when the house was new, but it's 1977, it's
There we are. It's 5 o'clock. It's time to start the USD 305 School Board meeting. Please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will start with approval of the agenda. And Ms. Exline, do we have any changes to the agenda?
Madam President, the agenda is good as written.
Okay, do I have a motion on that? Jim,
Madam President, I move we approve the agenda.
do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Nedra. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed? No. It's passed 6-0 because Emma is not here. We will go on to the recognitions and presentations. We'll start with the KISA presentation at Stewart with Deanna Carpenter and Erin McCorkle.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting us here tonight to talk to you about our school. As you said, I'm Deanna Carpenter, and this is my lead teacher, Erin McCorkle. And I just want to say what a blessing it is to stand here before you and to represent Stewart. We love our Stewart family, and this is such a great district to work for. And to just say thank you to these amazing leaders who take such good care of us. So thank you for letting us be here this evening. As you know, our district has selected two goals. Go ahead. The next one. Has selected two goal areas to help us measure our progress towards ensuring our students are, at some point in their future, successful high school graduates. So in our presentation, we want to share what Stewart's doing towards these two goals. So our first goal is post-secondary success. And I'm just going to read this to you. Each student will be a successful high school graduate with the direction, skills, and grit for post-secondary success. We're going to look at our Stewart goals and strategies that we are working on. Our Stewart Building Leadership Team is planning to monitor curriculum and classroom instruction regularly. The principal and assistant principal will keep a focus on instructional improvements and student learning outcomes. And we've listed some of the strategies that we are using to do that. Number one, student engagement and rigor, which we are measuring through our walkthroughs. We are looking for kids who are up and moving, kids who are talking, kids who are engaging and thinking out loud with each other. Number two, Hattie's high effect strategies. That has been a focal point for our staff development last year, and we're continuing this year. John Hattie studied learning and ranked strategies according to what works best in education. Of his 100 or so strategies, we chose 3 to practice and monitor during instruction time. We've selected classroom and discussion, feedback, and questioning. And in the spring of 2019, we made solid growth in the areas of feedback and classroom and discussion, and we were really excited to see that data come back. So this fall, we are focusing on questioning. So in our staff development, that's what we're talking to our teachers about, and that's what we're monitoring in our walkthroughs. Fourth, we start our day with professional learning communities, and we just call those PLCs. 1 week, we are focusing on math instruction, and the next week, we are focusing on reading instruction. And this gives our teachers a chance to collaborate with their team, learn from each other, share with each other, and also work closely with our reading coach. And during that time, the 5th thing I've added here is they also refer to the year at a glance, the curriculum alignment. Many of our Salina kids are moving from school to school, and so we each try to follow that curriculum alignment, so when a child comes in from another building, they're at a familiar place in their instruction. So next, we'll look at our data for post-secondary success. Our first measure is second grade reading, and what we've decided to do at Stewart is we are looking at 5 measures to help us monitor our progress. One measure evaluates our K2 program, the one that you're looking at here, and the other 4 monitor our K5 program, and so that's our 5th grade data. Each one of our goals includes 5% growth each year, and we're hoping that at least we'll have 80% of our students at mastery when we get to that point. So looking at our second grade data, you can see that in 2017, 71% of our kiddos were at target. In 2018, 84%, and 2019, 83%. Our next slide is 5th grade math assessments. This is the ACT test that's fairly new for us. You'll notice our scores in 2019 were lower. I can tell you instruction is better than it has ever been before. We'll continue to watch this trend. Our 2019 group did increase 16% from the fall to the spring data, which was a significant growth for that group of kids, and we were really proud of them for that growth. We'll continue to watch this trend. Because this test is new for us, we don't have years of data to compare to, so we'll keep an eye on that. Our next slide is also ACT, but this is our reading data. One note on this data, our 2019 kiddos made a 20% jump in growth from the fall to the spring. So again, that group of kiddos really worked hard to make growth from fall to spring. And our next piece of data is now we're going to switch to state assessments. So for math, you can see that in 2016 we were at 38%, 2017 37%, and we saw a jump in 2018 to 47%. Again, our goal is eventually to be at or above 80%. And our last slide that we are watching for our students is Kansas State reading. And here we were at 46%, 45%, and 48%. So again, we'll just continue to watch that data. So from these 5 data points, it is helping us to measure our growth and guide instruction. And here are some of the strengths and areas of growth our staff gathered after the study. Strengths, our second grade reading shows an upward trend, which is encouraging. In fact, our kindergarten through second grade reading data is showing growth. So what we're doing at K2 is working. Full day kindergarten has also had a positive impact on student reading. Since full day kindergarten was implemented, our primary reading scores are increasing. Having that additional time for the kindergarten students is helping them be more prepared for first grade. Areas of growth, and our staff looked at all of this data and some other data, and these are some things that we noticed. We need to spend more time working on grammar as our students are struggling with that portion of the ACT, English Language Arts Assessment. Like I said earlier, our staff development is targeting higher level questions to prepare students for the rigor of those standardized tests. And Stewart is hopeful to have a math coach in the future to help guide our teachers in math instruction, just as our reading coach does in reading. Next, Erin's going to share with you our social emotional stats.
All right, so Mrs. Carpenter talked about our post-secondary, and just like post-secondary, we have goals in our social emotional, and on the screen you can see our goal is for each student to be successful high school graduate with the direction, skills, and grit that is needed for the post-secondary success. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at our data and then the strategies we've put in place for that. So we decided to use our office referrals as our data collection to look at our social emotional. And you can see in 2016, 2017, we had 111 office referrals. And then in 2017, 2018, we decreased that by 16%. And we're down to 93 office referrals. And then last year in 2018, 2019, we decreased by 5%, which was our goal. So we still made our goal. And we were at 88 office referrals last year. So some of the strategies we used are, number one, we did a book study called Help for Billy. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but it is a book that helps teachers have strategies for students that have trauma in their life. And trauma could be anything from a death in the family to a divorce. It's not trauma, it doesn't have to be a big trauma. But so those gave our teachers strategies to work with students. Number two, each year we do a SRSS data collection, which is a student risk screening scale. And we use that to identify students that are at risk and then to put strategies in place to help those students. We also did a mindset in the classroom book study with our entire staff, which is giving, again, teachers and students strategies to help them become resilient and successful. We have a full-time counselor and a part-time social worker, and with that, we are able to do group interventions. We do social groups, we do one-on-one interventions with students to teach them some of those social skills that they might be lacking. And then this year, we have started restorative circles within our school, and this is a way to help support community within the classroom through self-management, social awareness, and relationship skills. So those are our 5 things that we are working on right now through our social emotional strategies. Our strengths are, the numbers show that our office referrals are declining, and our full-time counselor and our social worker have really impacted the ability for us to give that time and support to our students who need them. And then as a staff, we are all working on those social emotional goals, and we see that paying off not only social emotionally, but academically as well. And our teachers just feel that they are better equipped to meet the needs of our students. And the area of growth is at Stewart, we just have a large number right now, and that is a challenge. The larger class sizes, our teachers are feeling the need that it's harder to meet the need of all those kids. So that's where our challenge is right now. That was.
Any questions?
And we put some pictures of cute kids on there too. For extra points.
Yes, Carol has a question.
Could you give me some examples of what would determine a need for an intervention? We're talking about small group interventions and individual interventions. What sparks those?
So the SRSS screener we do has different categories, and the teachers rank them on their need, where they see that need. And then we relate that to our second step curriculum that the school district does. And then we also, if a student is not being successful in class with that tier one,
So you're talking about the screener and applying it to the individual student as you notice something that the screener
shows
points
the
out
need
to
for.
you? Okay, and then what do you do as a second step?
Second step is the name of a curriculum, I
Yes.
believe.
Second step is the curriculum that our counselor does during counseling time. And so she does that with all students. And then if that isn't meeting their needs, that SRSS screener shows us that maybe something else is needed. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. What do you do then?
So for example, maybe a child is having trouble blurting out in class, and the teacher has marked that on the screener. So the counselor then knows when they are in her counseling class, she wants to address that need with that class. And then perhaps that child might need a small group intervention where she has 4 or 5 kids with common problems, where she can talk about, here's what we need to do when we have something to say, and give them some strategies.
Great.
So
That helps
it's
a
a way
great deal.
It's a way for us to give them tools to be successful socially and emotionally.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Gary?
Thank you. Do we follow students like when they're seniors in high school and say, okay, that was a Huesner kid, that was a Gracie Stewart kid? I mean, this is about preparation for post-high school and all that. Do we trace kids back to their elementary when we're looking at how successful they are later on? I mean, you've got all these ways of telling whether you're successful according to the strategies and the criteria you establish, and I agree that's all you can do when they're in your school, but do we look at it, okay, let's look at a 12th grader and how are they doing? And when they came from Huesner, do we do that?
Actually, we can trace them all the way back to preschool as of this year, tracking, did they go to preschool? And yes, you could go back and collect that data. Of course, that would be beyond us, you know, if that's happening.
We have started to look at some of that data at the middle school level with the different elementary schools. And we've done some comparison of feeder schools into Lakewood, feeder schools into South Middle. And this year, like Deanna said, we've tried to identify which preschool students have gone to in order for us to understand better what's happening at that early childhood level as well, because we do think it's important for us to have that K-12 look. That is a new way of looking at data that really we're having to build into our student information systems, ways to track that more effectively. Once you get to middle school, high school, it's easier because everybody's coming from the same place. But it takes a little finesse to do the elementary to middle school, and we really are looking more as a group than at individuals.
Any other questions? Jim?
My question's a little more back on the numbers, because numbers are numbers if I understand them all right. And I guess when I look at this, we're using the 5th grade spring assessment as our benchmark. And then as we go through, we're saying that when we retested, for example, on the 5th grade reading for 2018, 48% of the students achieved benchmark. Is that how I understand that?
Correct,
Okay. And our goal is to move that to 80?
correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have
Carol.
another one. Again, on the data business, how often do you, and by you, I mean, are there individual teams broken up? I mean, Team A, Team B, Team C, that sort of thing. How often do you meet to discuss either individuals or to evaluate data?
We have a schedule and we meet regularly. Erin and I and our reading coach meet every Monday and we look at our data. We also meet with our building leadership team, which is a representative of every piece and part of our school. We have a specials teacher, a SPED teacher, a primary teacher, intermediate teacher. And we meet with them twice a month to look at data. And then during our staff development, and some of those are weekly, or many staff developments are weekly, we look at data with them. We have different grade levels, look at data from other grade levels to see how are they doing and to look at it with a different set of eyes. And then we put that information together to help us make some decisions about
So very
instruction.
much an ongoing process where a lot of
Absolutely.
people are involved.
It really is driving our instruction,
Excellent.
what we see in the data.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
The
Jim?
only other thing I'd say is thank you for coming. I know it's getting up here in front of all of us and we start throwing questions. I appreciate your time and all you
our
do
pleasure.
for the students as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of consent agenda items, which include the following: the minutes of the September 10th, 2019 regular meeting, the personnel report, treasurer's report, investment report, journal entries, and approval of the Heartland parking lot expansion bid to T&R Construction in the amount of $78,274.
Madam President?
Yes.
I move approval of the consent agenda items as listed.
It's been moved. Do I have a second? Jim seconds. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on this? If not, all in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried 6-0. Next on the agenda is a public forum. If there is anyone here who would like to speak, this would be the time. Seeing none, we will note that there's nothing on the action agenda tonight, and we'll go on to the discussion agenda, which starts with reading diagnostic assessment and benchmark assessment system with Trish Bandry.
Well, good evening. I have more data for you. I am Trish Bandray, and I'm the District Reading Instructional Specialist. And we're going to talk about 3 assessments, really, tonight. 2 of them are couched under one heading, the Reading Diagnostic Assessment, and then the Benchmark Assessment System. So when you saw on Aaron and Deanna's slides where they talked about BAS, that is this Benchmark Assessment System. So the data that they showed you are the results from this test. So that might help you make some connections. So we'll start with the RDA side. And the Reading Diagnostic Assessment is 2 separate tests. One of them measures a student's skills with phonological awareness, and that test is called the PAST for short. Things like, can I hear the number of words in a spoken sentence? Can I hear the number of sounds in a spoken word? Can I identify rhymes? Can I produce rhymes? So everything is done by listening. This doesn't include print letters. It's all by listening. And that is given to all of our kindergarten students and first grade students at the end of every quarter, their kindergarten and first grade year. Okay, it's a continuum of skills, including 14 total skills. And those are broken up across those quarters, those 2 years. And then the phonics assessment measures the print side of things. What kinds of relationships do students understand between printed letters and sounds? So the skills on that assessment, of which there are 19, take a look at their ability to pronounce things like digraphs, blends, tell how many syllables are in a word, how do I pronounce various vowel patterns. So this looks at their phonics skills in progression of development. Okay. That assessment is administered to kindergartners, first graders, and second graders at the end of every quarter. So you have some data here from 2018-19, and this is the phonological awareness test, the PAST. And it says Q1 is a pre and Q4 is a post. But what I want to make sure you understand is that students are not assessed on their ability with the same number of skills. The test is the same, but we up the ante between quarter 1 and quarter 4. So at the end of quarter 1, we expect our kindergartners to have mastered 2 skills, but at the end of quarter 4, we expect them to have mastered 8. So when you see a change from 72% on grade level at Q1 to 86% on grade level at Q4, understand that's an increase of grade level, but it's also an increase of skill. We're not just looking at a certain number over time. Does that make sense? Okay. And so first grade the same way. We expect 9 skills at the end of Q1 for first grade, and then completion of that continuum at the end of first grade with 13 skills. So the progress there you can see. So 91% of our students on grade level at the end of first grade having completed that continuum is a good result. And that's because of our teachers. Phonics assessment, again, it says pre and post, but that means Q1 versus Q4. So at the end of kindergarten, we expect, at the end of Q1, kindergarten, we expect the mastery of 2 skills, but at the end of Q4, mastery of 6. So you can see that huge growth from that fall of kindergarten, their very first time at the end of quarter 1, which teachers are right now starting that testing, and until they get to the end of the year. And when we look back over data throughout the years, where our kindergartners come to us is a great predictor of where they're going to wind up to. Our students who come to us having preschool experiences start out higher and thus end higher at the end of the kindergarten year. And that's something we're starting to look at by tracking that preschool attendance as a part of our kindergarten readiness goals with the district. So then you can also see first grade, 56% in the fall. Not quite as successful as we wanted to be with Q4. We upped the ante. There's quite a few skills that have to be mastered between Q1 and Q4. And that first grade group had a bit more struggle to get there. So the second grade teachers are now looking at those students and saying, okay, what can we do extra to get those first graders where they need to be at the end of second grade on that continuum? And then second graders also take that phonics test. So the fall score for this past year, 61% on grade level at Q4, and then the mastery of all the skills, 19 at 72%. So we've got those 2 measures that take a look at phonological awareness and phonics information. Then we've also got the benchmark assessment system. The BAS is more of a comprehensive measure. It takes a look at a student's ability to accurately pronounce words, so a phonics component, their ability to comprehend what they're reading, and the fluency with which they read. So the way this test is set up, it's a one-on-one assessment, and the student reads a piece of text to the teacher. It looks like a small book. The teacher takes a running record, which is basically a form of shorthand in which they record everything the child tells them. Words that are correct, words that are missed, how the child pronounced it instead. We also have a rubric that we use to measure their comprehension because there's a conversation at the end of the story where the teacher and the child talk about some questions. And then we also use a rubric to measure their reading fluency. That test is given formally in the fall, in August, and in the spring, in May. In the interims, the teachers use their anecdotal notes from daily lessons to move the students up in continuing gradients of reading levels so that they can make the progress that they need between fall and May to meet those benchmark reading level goals, okay? So it's one-on-one, progress monitoring is done, but formally the test happens fall, spring. So kindergartners, it says kindergarten fall, but we don't administer this with our kindergartners until right before the holiday break because they begin small group guided reading when they return after that break. So fall truly means December for kindergarten and not August. So our kindergartners do all of that hard work with all those phonemic awareness skills and phonics skills in the fall, and then they come in and begin their guided reading in the spring. So 53% to 70% with 16, and then you can see 17 and you can see 18, the amount of growth between fall and spring for our kindergarten students. Again, we're upping the ante. So we expect level A gradient text as where we want them to be in that December testing, but we expect level C when they finish in May. First grade data, again, they take this in August, and then they take it again in May, And you can see the change from August to May as far as grade level, and we've upped the ante. First grade is a huge year for growth, all the way from level C to level I. So we're expecting quite a bit of progress. Second grade is,
Could we go back? I'm sorry. I had
You bet.
one question. The previous slide. So the fall ones, there's no reds. Is that, why is
and
that?
that's a very good question. In kindergarten, we don't allow anybody to be tier 3 because they're just beginning. And fall of first grade, you cannot be red either. They've not been able to read far enough level-wise to have a true tier 3. Good question. Thank you for asking that. Second grade, you can see this is our second greatest amount of growth that we expect is from second graders. The largest amount of growth comes from first grade and then second grade. Second grade going all the way from level I to level M before the end of the year. And you can see those changes between fall and spring. One of the things that concerns me the most as a district person and looking at all of our data overall is the amount of summer regression that we see. What will wind up happening, especially with our K-2 students, and this is an area of concern for me that I'm trying to do some problem solving with. We will have kindergarten, first and second grade students leave us in the spring on grade level, and then we test them in the fall and they've gone backwards. As much as 4 to 5 to 6% of our students going backwards. So sometimes it feels like we're taking 3 steps forward and 2 steps back over the summer. So trying to find ways to get books in kids' hands over the summer, encouraging parents to read to, read with, trying to figure out ways to get kids connected to the public library. All those things are things I'm trying to problem solve and to brainstorm. Our buildings do a really good job of sending texts home with kids over the summer, but I think there are things that we could do to try to make this even better. It saddens me to get kids to this high point in May, and then when we test them in the fall, we've lost some footage. That is not something that is our challenge alone. That's a challenge in a lot of places. But I wanted you to see that, those data. Grade 3, not as much growth is expected in grades 3, 4, 5, because what we want to do with them is we want to get them to read widely and read deeply. So a lot more genres are introduced and taught at grade 3 and grade 4 and grade 5, so therefore we don't have as many levels to increase because we're spending more time with different genres of text. Because these kids are becoming quite fluent readers, and they need to be able to experience a wide variety of text. So you can see the fall to spring here with 16, 17, 17, 18, 18, 19. And then grade 4, again, not as much growth. P to S is the level expectation, but that change from fall to spring even and upping the ante of the gradient. And then grade 5, level S to V. So teachers use these data for a number of things. One of the things they do is to create small, homogeneous, flexible groups so that students are placed at the right level of text for instruction. They use the data to plan what kinds of things happen in that lesson. Are we noticing kids need practice with this certain phonics skill, or is it this certain fluency piece that we need to work on? Or is it a certain level of comprehension question that they're having trouble with? So they use these data to provide academic instruction for kids that meets the needs of each of those kids. They also plan warm-up activities before whole group lessons. There may be a certain skill that several groups are having trouble with, so we're going to address that with the whole group at the beginning of a lesson. And then they also use the data to design literacy stations that give kids the opportunity to continue to practice those skills in an independent setting. Any questions?
I have a question.
Certainly.
When you get kids in a homogeneous group, are they pretty much there for the long haul, or
No.
do they change a lot?
That's why I said homogeneous flexible, because as their needs change, they are moved. And as their skill level increases, they're moved to the appropriate level. No, they don't remain with that group all year long. It's very flexible and fluent.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have
Yes, Carol.
questions. On the fifth grade data,
Okay.
the fall 2016 and spring 2017, I think that was the only place in all the data that we looked at that there was that slight slippage back. Do you have any idea what might have accounted for that?
I cannot. I will tell you, one of the things we did, though, that particular year, because this bothered me, was we took a look at how many students were one level away from being proficient. So in this case, in the spring, we want them to have achieved level V text. So we looked, what's our percent that's set at level U? And I can't remember that number off the top of my head, I apologize, but it was a fairly large number. So what this told us was we needed to watch our progress monitoring more closely and make sure that those students were moved to that next level as soon as they were ready to go. And so teachers were kind of holding on to them a little bit too long and not pushing them up to that next level quite as soon as they needed to. And that's something that you learn. The more that you do guided reading, the better feel you get for when students are ready to go.
And for the public, as well as for us board members, would you give us a definition of literacy stations? What does a literacy station, what does it comprise?
Any activity that involves reading, writing, phonics skills, could be games, could be books that they are reading and doing activities with on their Chromebooks. It could be independent texts that they are reading to a partner to practice fluency. Any kind of activity, really, but it has to involve reading and writing, and somehow speaking and listening are involved too in some of them.
And these are designed for individuals or groups?
They're
of kids?
usually, sometimes it's an independent task at a center, but sometimes it is a group task at a center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, Ms. Mandry. Next on the agenda is the special ed restructure in USD 305 with Mike Lowers.
Good evening. Sorry, I was going to run my own lights, but Mr. Upson stepped up there. So. Sorry, got all kinds of things popping up here. All right. Well, thanks again for the time this evening. I feel like I'm kind of dominating your time here, but the last meeting during a work session, we talked about this content. So I wanted to come back and revisit what we have kind of discovered and the input that we've gotten from staff since the last presentation. So want to kind of go through that with you here. Again, we're talking about the special education restructure here in USD 305. We've been looking at the service model that we've been using here in Salina and considering changes in that. So, and what do we want to do? Well, we want to place students in the least restrictive environment possible to receive their educational services. That's really our main goal. And we want to keep students in their neighborhood schools with their peers whenever possible. Our goal is to create a continuum of special ed services at the neighborhood schools. And we also have talked quite a bit about the definition of functional level students. That term that we use over the last 20 years has really broadened out to include a lot of students. So part of our efforts here will be to narrow that definition down and apply that to our students that typically out in other districts, other co-ops have functional skills or functional programming. In our district, it's a much broader definition, so we're going to work on that as well. We also want to expand the day school model for students with severe mental health needs and for Our co-op, that's the Opportunity Now program, which I think many of you have had the opportunity to visit and interact with the folks there, and they just do a super job. They currently have grades 9 through 12, and we've heard for a number of years great support for the program, but also a desire to have additional grade levels there beyond the 9-12. Welcome, Emma. Good to see you. Other districts in our co-op and outside the co-op, they serve a greater range of students in their neighborhood schools. CKCIE covers 4,000 square miles. We have 49 school buildings that we provide staff for currently. Some, just due to the transportation, some folks can be an hour and a half from Salina. That barrier of transportation has really helped districts serve kids in their neighborhood schools. And truly, that's their least restrictive environment. So there is that barrier, but it's also helped them develop the service model in their building so they have a broader continuum of service. Really, we want to do that same thing in Salina, to try and help kids be in their neighborhood school. Some of that will be with that narrower definition of functional as well. So the low incidence classroom involved are the adaptive or ALC program at Stewart, the autism program at Usner, Opportunity Now classrooms, and we'll talk a little more about that here in a bit. The emotional behavior disorder or EBD classrooms at Lakewood, and those classrooms at Meadowlark. So if you remember the last time I visited with you, we really put out there a plan that was do it all at one time. And I'm proud to say our staff feels quite free to tell us whatever they think and to give us input. And you know, that's a good thing, that's healthy, you know. When you can sit down and folks just say, okay, because, you know, frankly, it's really hard to always think of all the ins and outs, and they're the experts working with the kids every day. So they came up with some excellent points. So what I'm going to present is we took the plan that was presented to you originally, and we're going to do it in phases. That really was their thought. All of it at one time was overwhelming. It was too much to do all at one time, so we broke it into phases. Now, you can imagine when you get into something of this magnitude, there's a million and one ways you can do things, but I think we have a good way to break it up using the input that we got from our staff. So in phase one, now this will be the second part of the presentation. We would like to expand Opportunity Now beyond grades 9-12, eventually through phases to grades 3-12. The deal is, though, that the building they're in now, while we're very thankful, you know, the Board of Ed has been very supportive of Opportunity Now, their facility, but it's small and the size really stops us from expanding to larger grade levels. So we'll talk to you about a building here in a little bit. That's part of this whole process. But if we can get the building set up, 9-12 Opportunity Now would move to that new campus the first year. And we would do some training as well to prepare for the restructure of the Lakewood EBD program. Oh, I missed one, I'm sorry. I just went right on by one, okay. Also, Stewart ALC, we would actually do that year one. Originally, we had Stewart year one and we had Usner year one. We would move Usner to year two. So we would separate those two. With Stewart, they have that adaptive learning center classroom. We would relocate, take students and move them back out into their neighborhood schools. And we have great experts for working with our students in that area, and we would move them out into schools as well. Currently, we have 4 ALC teachers, and then we have a group of paras assigned to each of those teachers. So we would move them out into other Salina schools. Training would be provided phase 1 also to prepare for that USNR change the following year. We have been really making efforts in the last year to provide structured teaching training and to offer a number of things in the summer that we had not in the past. We'll continue to do that and work to build those toolboxes for the teachers. So that is phase 1, which is 2020, 2021. Phase 2 is the following year, 21, 22. We would actually restructure USNR that year. Students in the USNR autism program would move to their neighborhood schools, and staff from USNR program, the teachers and the paras again, will move out to other Salina elementary schools. So you can see at this point, we have 4 teachers at Stewart, 2 at USNR, and then the paras. That's a total of 6 teachers, and about 25 paras would be sent out to work with the students. We also that year, 21-22, would restructure the Lakewood EBD programs. So we would take students and we would create grades 6-8 at Opportunity Now and expand those grade levels. Staff would also move, just like with the other programs. Our EBD teachers and their paras would move to Opportunity Now. We've really made a strong effort in the last many years to have students in the EBD program that need mental health services, and that's really where Opportunity Now specializes. I think there was a time where we had more students in the program that might have had conduct disorders or more things that weren't best suited for EBD programming, but we have really worked hard to get the correct students the services in those programs over the last several years. Also in phase 2, training will be provided because we'll be gearing up then to do the same thing at Meadowlark. Same types of training will need to be provided. Phase 3 in 22-23, then we would restructure the Meadowlark grades 3 through 5, move those folks to Opportunity Now. If we're granted, you know, our proposal is to use the Salina West facility for that. Again, students, if we had somebody who was not in active mental health therapy, you know, when I was looking at the Lakewood students, there was really 3 groups. Those in active mental health therapy, sizable group of kids that they would like to get in active mental health therapy, and then a handful of kids that were in the program that maybe moved in from out of state or those types of things. So as we phase this in, we really want to tailor this to meet the students' needs. The last group there is grades K2 students in the EBD program at Meadowlark. Those students, you know, we've made a real strong effort. We have a therapeutic preschool now, so we're really trying to identify and work with students as early as we can to help them be successful in school. K2 kids are really in any kind of special ed programming are difficult to kind of figure out sometimes. It's hard to give them an assessment. It's hard to really know what exactly their needs are. So that K2 part, I don't want to be wishy-washy on anything, but that part of it, that would be year 4. I'm not quite sure what that would look like. I put down on paper, we would keep those students at Meadowlark. Could be a hybrid room. It could end up, ends up being K-12. Just not quite sure yet.
The thing is, as you develop programs like this, what I thought it looked like 2 weeks ago, it's different. So, you know, if you think 4 years down the road, I'm just being real with you, 4 years down the road, I think that's going to evolve and change. And as we develop our services and add services for kids, it may end up looking a little bit different. But I think just know those kids are going to be served. So that's the important thing there. Of course, communication's the key. You know, if you learn anything from an experience, it's how you communicate in what order and with folks and in what methods. And so we'll just continue to do our very best to engage everybody. And like I said, folks haven't been shy about saying what they thought, and they've come up with some great points, things that we can work on. Communicating with families and staff, I think Lynn and I and Jennifer and anybody who would, you know, lots of help there, that we've been developing all kinds of lines of communication so we make sure everybody knows exactly what's happening. So, any questions about that part before I move on to the building portion? Yes, Gary.
Yeah, Mike. I think you maybe answered this during our study session, but how many out-of-district students will this affect, and what are we doing to communicate with those other school districts if they may be affected?
Great question. So in year one, it's ALC at Stewart. There's 35 students enrolled there right now. One is from out of district, 34 from in the community here. So it's not real difficult for me to communicate with that superintendent. That particular student has a one-on-one para who would go back with the student. So as kids go back, it's unusual that students even coming into ALC. That just doesn't happen very often. But as that occurs, of course, we want to train the staff there or provide the support they need. But and also, I've kind of laid a foundation a little bit with my own board, and then I have sent them information in the last week or so here, laying a lot of this other stuff out. So we're just continuing to get input from them also.
Any other questions?
Any other?
It looks like you can go on to the next section,
Okay.
Salina West Campus.
All right, so part of this proposal is Opportunity Now is in a very small building that's been well kept up, but really limits our ability to add grade levels there. So a little bit about Opportunity Now. We're very proud. It's really our alternative or day school for special education services. It's a therapeutic day school. We have a cooperative effort where we have our staff there. We have 3 teachers, about 9 paras, and then we have Central Kansas Mental Health case managers working all day, every day with the students. So that's our therapeutic model. We do have an administrator there. We have a social worker there, office gal who does a great job, and then our 3 teachers. So we provide special ed services for students with severe mental health and socio-emotional needs, and they serve students from all 12 school districts that we serve. The situation is, and Mr. Hayes is here, and I praise Jeff and his colleagues, that over a decade ago, there was a need. There were students who really had some mental health needs and they needed services. And truly, the odds of them graduating from school were not good. They could graduate from school, but we just had to figure out how to help them do that. So we came up with the concept of Opportunity Now, and it is amazing, you know, every time I go there and there's a student that was there as a freshman and struggled, and then when they're a junior or senior, they give you a tour of the facility and they tell you all about, and they're very, very upfront about things. Talk about how they felt when they came and then how they felt as they're leaving. And they're leaving with a diploma. So, you know, that's the awesome thing about Opportunity Now. And Jeff's to be commended. He is definitely an outside the box thinker, and so are the folks there. So they're to be commended. So why move to the Salina West campus? Well, it's sitting on the other side of my parking lot, and I look at it every day. No, I'm sorry. No, truly, that is such an awesome facility. And it's a facility that's just tailor-made for alternative programming. It's secure. It's just fabulous. So, you know, I'm here. I'm going to ask you about that. The socio-emotional needs of our students with those severe mental health needs, they continue to grow and expand. I think I'm not telling you anything you probably don't know there, but school is the last place, you know, we take everybody and we provide every service we can. And as, you know, I was out at a community forum at OCCK yesterday, and I was struck by the fact, and they're fabulous people too, and we work with them also, but they were talking about their waiting lists, and you know, well, Mr. Smith kind of got pushed down the list. We aren't going to be able to give him service for 8 or 9 months. It's not their fault. They got so many people on their caseload. For us, the student enrolls, we're going to provide service Monday. There is no waiting list, you know. So when money runs out for therapy services or services with severe mental health needs in our community, it doesn't matter. They're still with Mr. Stevens at school every day, and he's just doing everything he can to figure out how to help them. So that's part of this. Again, many of those outside folks, that's out of their control. Grants run out, all kinds of things disappear, come and go. So at Opportunity Now, we have highly specialized staff to meet their needs. We have that day school environment. You know, we're talking about two opposing things here. In part of our programs, we're going to put our kids back in neighborhood schools. We really found an opportunity now, those students, and yet it is a more restrictive environment, but it turns out that for those particular kids and their needs, that's what works. So we want to expand that concept. Larger building will allow that to happen. So our proposal, expand those grade levels to 312. We transition the expanded program over a 3-year period. If granted, you know, as we did this too, several board members last time thought of stuff, you know, I try not to have tunnel vision, but, you know, by the way, if you have a 4th grader there, where's their playground equipment, you know, all that kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, I'm back to working in a K-12 building. I've done that several times where it's like, here's the high school kids going to the VOAG shop right next to the playground equipment. That's how it is in a K-12 building. So that's really how we have to think about this. These kids are exceptional and they have exceptional needs, but they're kids and we're going to give them everything they would get anywhere. So, and then relocate that program over to that campus. So the timeline, 1920, we'll do some prep over there. We talked about that last time. I kind of shared with you. I'd come up with, you know, $30-some thousand, and you guys tossed in playground equipment, which is really awesome. But getting that all together. Opportunity Now is a special place because they not only, they teach the child, really the whole child, the whole student, young man, young women, who, you know, we want them to go out and be happy and productive in life and do well. So they've got a washer and a dryer, they have a shower, they work on real life skills that the students need. So we want to replicate that at the new building. So those are important parts. The garden, I don't know if you guys has been over to see the garden at Opportunity Now. You know, we've kind of tried gardens at different places. Some have gone, but over there, I'll tell you what, if you're having a rough day, go sit in the garden and just relax a little bit. It is truly a effective therapeutic tool for the kids there. It's pretty awesome, So it'd be prepped this year. Next year, grades 9, 12 would move over to the facility. And then we would provide some training. While we have 3 highly skilled teachers there, they also haven't taught middle school and elementary. So even though we're going to have some staff move over with those students, you're still under the same roof. You're still, you know, forming kind of a whole new group of folks there. So 21-22, Lakewood moves over. The teachers and the paras move over. They also haven't worked with high school kids, so we've got that to kind of look into. And then provide training to prepare for Meadowlark the next year coming over. Then 22-23, grades 3-5 Meadowlark, EBD kids move over. Now, as we transition all the kids in these programs, we have to remember the students have transitional needs also. So each spring, we would have visits for the students. We would work with them as well. We got to prepare the staff, but we also have to help the students transition over. So, and then the grade K2 kiddos are kind of 4 years down the road, and that's kind of part of the developmental plan there.
Okay, I'm standing up at this time because I want to be very clear what it is that we're asking of the board and the impact for USD 305. You've been hearing about Central Kansas Cooperative and Education Programs, but on this particular restructure, they're asking you to make a significant commitment to our programming in terms of letting us restructure the Salina West campus for them. So I want to be very clear about the program location over the next 3 years so that things are just completely transparent. So in 2020-21, we have 2 different groups of students who are currently served in our EBD, emotional behavior disorder classrooms, okay? So in 2021, our K-5 students who have mental health needs would still be at Meadowlark in both cases. Our 6 through 8 students who are EBD would still be at Lakewood. But our Opportunity Now students would actually move to the Opportunity Now program at Salina West, and so that would be the only change. The 9 through 12 EBD students would continue to be at Central High, okay? In 2021-22, at that point, 6 through 8 would move to that Salina West campus Opportunity Now. That's when we get the expansion of services. Our K-5 kiddos would still be at Meadowlark in both cases, and our 6-12 students would be at the neighborhood school. You'll remember we talked about that the vast majority, and I think it's maybe all but one, of the students in that program at the middle school level are already in their home school. Okay, so that really is not a large change. And then in 2022-23, we would have that K2 program still at Meadowlark because we still need to talk about what is the best case scenario for those kids. And we would have that 3 to 12 expansion at Opportunity Now on the Salina West campus. And then the 3 through 12 EBD conduct students would be in the neighborhood school. So the projected expenditures, this is going to require some capital improvement funds from USD 305. And so I want to talk a little bit about what those would be. We do need to add that washer and dryer if you approve moving the program to that Salina West campus. That is something that is needed for this program. We need to add a shower. We would need to add that garden space. That's a nice part of that therapeutic component and is important to the program. We would need physical education space. Some of that would be indoors. We've got a nice basement area that could be restructured for that, and some of that would also be outdoors. And then Cafe Blue is a reinforcement system that they use at Salina West. It would be important that we would set that up excuse me, I misspoke, not at Salina West, at Opportunity Now. So we would need to set that up at that Salina West campus for them. The Cafe Blue reinforcement system is a level system where students earn privileges over time. And so having that reinforcement system available to them on the Salina West campus would be important. We would need to do some wiring in the kitchen to allow the Exceptional Caterers program to continue. You've probably enjoyed their cookies and some of their meals, and that is a great vocational career experience for our students, and so we would need to make sure that that was still available. We would have some moving expenses and unanticipated costs. And then that playground equipment piece, we talked to Mr. Upson, and he's thinking maybe about $30,000. So we're talking out of our capital improvement expenditures, a $63,000 commitment. Of course, it would still be a USD 305 building, but that is a commitment that you need to understand. We would need to put into this in order to expand that program to serve grades 3 through 12. So my recommendation would be that we would relocate the existing Opportunity Now program to the Salina West campus. And here are my reasons just in a nutshell. The first thing is that building was built for an alternative program. This would keep the use an alternative program. That building has security features that really are perfect, frankly, for separation for the elementary versus the upper level students, so that we can have both of those programs in that building and feel comfortable about that situation with our students. This puts highly specialized staff to support students' needs, our students with the most severe mental health needs, in the same place. So it increases that therapeutic support for our students who are really, really needing that for lifelong success. It would also reduce transitions for students. When you think about students that have therapeutic needs, transitions are tough. Transitions are tough for all of our kids. But the students in these particular programs have additional barriers that reducing transitions would be positive for them. And then finally, it would recapture that classroom space at Meadowlark for general education needs. Meadowlark is growing, and having those classrooms for general education needs would be positive in that particular building. So with that, Mike and I are open for questions. The intention is that this would come back, this part of the discussion would come back to you on the next agenda in October, so that you could make a decision and have additional time for questions and think time about whether or not you would like to grant the use of that Salina West campus for this alternative program. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Do we have a number of students that will be involved in this program? You know, like
At Opportunity
starting
Now.
in, yeah.
Yeah, generally for 9-12, our top has been 30,
Okay,
kind of our target.
okay,
But obviously we'd be,
expanding.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So probably, I think it's going to at least double.
Okay, thank you.
The layout is, if you've been in there too, if you think of the old DCP classroom, it's kind of on the south side. It's on one side of the cafeteria area. That is really just an excellent learning space there. I could envision that being elementary. And then on the other side would be secondary. There's separate restrooms. If you remember Mr. Kennedy, when he designed that place, he tried every single security thing I'd ever heard of at that time. So the security of the doors and the location of those rooms is really ideal.
Thank you.
Gary?
You've used the term day school several times. Can you give us a definition of that?
Sure. Yeah, I think of it similar to alternative programming for kids with exceptional needs, but yeah, kind of a general term, but that it's a way for kids to get an education in the least restrictive environment that's appropriate for them. You know, of course, we want kids to be out in school with their peers as much as we can. For the students in Opportunity Now, I think it is the least restrictive environment. And some of our students, are actually in residential programs that attend school outside Salina. For instance, we have students who are transported to the School for the Blind each Sunday night and bused back Friday evening. They're in a residential program, not a day school. If that student lived in Olathe, in that area, they could live at home and go to their day school. So that's kind of where that terminology comes from. But so it's a way for kids to really remain at home in their residence, but get education in a day school, if that makes sense.
Idra?
It's my understanding that this has been in the planning for about 3 years or more. Is that correct?
Yeah, great point. 3 years ago, we were conducting our annual study at CKCIE. Our administrative team every single year looks at all the staff we have, where they work, where they serve students, what students are there, and how student needs are shifting. So we call it our population task force. I don't know who thought that up, but that was the name of it anyway. We do that every winter, and then we move staff around, or we talk to our board of control about we need to increase staff, those kinds of things. Well, we got to, like I said, we look and we're like, well, these same students aren't coming into town, and why is that? And it's interesting, at Stewart, there's a para, God bless her, she's worked there 20 years now and remembers all of it. And she was hired at Stewart when the ALC program opened. And there was herself and a teacher and another para. And they started bringing kids there for kind of a centralized program. And she said for the bulk of the day, they went out into gen ed and they came to their classroom as a resource room. So fast forward to now, just you said 2-3 years ago, we were looking and we have 4 teachers, we have a dozen paras, and we've really moved farther and farther away from kids going out into general ed settings at Stewart. It has just grown and grown and grown. At that point, we were considering, well, should we add a 5th teacher, another set of paras? Well, then when we look and we're like, the students are all from Salina, you cross a line where you start to tell yourself, we need to have this in all 8 schools. Usner started with a teacher and a few paras, and same thing, they have 2 teachers, they have a dozen paras, and we were considering adding a 3rd teacher and a whole nother set of paras. It's the same thing. If you get to where you're filling a wing with students, truly it's time to evolve your programming and have a continuum of service in all your buildings. So that's where that came from.
Thank you, Mike. I just wanted to point out to the public that this is not done on a whim. That just because you're hearing it now doesn't mean it hasn't been thought about, planned about, worked on for at least 3 years or more, and how the growth of this program has continued. And I'm also looking out there in the audience as someone else who's been an integral part of it. I think this is phenomenal, and I think it's needed, and I think the fact that we have a beautiful building in Salina West becoming available when it is, I think it's an opportunity that's a gift horse, and I want to thank you for all of your thinking out of the box and helping our students with this program.
I really appreciate all of your support and our staff, you know, folks, they have the great ideas. And thanks to Mrs. Exline, I so enjoy working with her now and her support. She's outside the box too. And Lynn and I kind of have the unusual thing where we've worked in a number of different programs, so it's important to do what's best for our students.
It is, it is.
Change is hard, I understand, and it scares folks, but it's time to evolve and to add this.
Well, thank you for the work with the presentation. I think it was very well done and complete.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carol has another question.
Yeah, I have about 3 questions. One on the equipment, telephone and computers, all of that sort of thing is already in place, so there would be no additional expense related to that other than what the district is doing anyway. Is that correct?
Right, the infrastructure is all there. So the technology that they currently have is our standard equipment, USD 305 standard, and so it would move with the students and with the faculty.
Thank you. And then, Mike, I'm assuming that the public does need to be aware that the bulk of students impacted by this change are Salina students. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we're talking about using a building that our taxpayers built for our kids. And that's important for people to know.
Yes.
And it's not just that we're not unwilling to serve others, but the bulk of those served will be our students.
Right.
Do you expect community response? I think we have someone maybe writing an article, perhaps, I don't know, about
Not
this.
sure.
We actually have been working on a communication plan, and my intention is that we will send letters to the parents of the adaptive program students and the autism program students, because we know what's happening there, that those letters will go out, with your nod, those letters would go out this evening. And we would send then a talking points and information to all staff. We've already communicated with principals. We've sent a copy of the talking points to principals, and because we want to make sure that people have accurate information. At a time like this, it does raise some angst. What's going to happen to my child? And so we want to make sure that we're continuing those open conversations. Then at the October 8th meeting, when the decision is made either yes or no on the Salina West campus and the Opportunity Now relocation, we would do a similar communication effort with those families, the students involved on the EBD side of this discussion. So yes, we do anticipate that there will be questions. We do anticipate that we'll have to be giving people information, and we'll be answering those questions to the best of our ability, because we certainly do want to partner with our families to make sure that kids' needs are met. And our teachers are an important part of this. You know, they're the ones that provide care for our kids on a daily basis. Our paraprofessionals do as well. And so having someone known go with the students, I think, is critical and brings a sense of peace in that way. But we do need to make sure we're communicating clearly on how that's all going to work.
Thank you.
I just had one question, which is a little off the subject, but can you tell us what Opportunity Now, the building was before it was Opportunity Now?
Yes, that originally was called the Ed Center, is kind of how I recall it being. And in the 1950s, it was a center for students with exceptional needs.
So all the way through, it's been that, okay.
Now,
Which is why it looks like a 1950s building.
it does, right, so that's how it was set up.
Okay.
It was largely vacated for a while. I remember when I was, I think, first maybe on the board, it was being used for students from Central High School to do some cooking classes and that sort of thing. That's, yeah, the exceptional caterers beginning this, I think, so.
But another question from Jim?
Yeah, my question is a little bit although we're looking at doing something different, I guess I consider it that we're not doing something different in the sense that this is something that no one else is doing. When we talk about the, moving the students back into neighborhood schools, things like that, and even when we look at the, 3 through 12 at Op Now, it's not something that's different and unique to us that we've just come up with out of nowhere. That's kind of a standard out there with the day schools and things like that. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes. One thing I didn't mention was we've really been searching for ways to serve a lot of the students in a more effective way. For instance, Opportunity Now folks do a fantastic job, but a group of us went to a day school in Topeka probably 18 months ago, and we visited, and it admittedly has even more intense services than we offer. But it's run by Greenbush, but it's at the airport in Topeka, which is, it seemed really strange. But, a building doesn't really mean anything. It's the people in the building that provide the service. But, so that's an example of we went and visited that. We'd heard that was a successful program, and we picked the brains of the staff there, talked about how it was set up, how they expanded programs, and how it worked, what they felt didn't work.
Mike, may I say that Greenbush is like CKCIE in that part of the state?
It is kind of on steroids, yeah, down there in the southeast part of the state. Yeah, big organization, but, so those types of things. Then, I mentioned the definition of functional. We have a big network of professionals where we just pick each other's brains all the time and try to see where are we on our own definition, on the services we're providing. And yeah, so we've been looking at that for many years now. And this is, like Nedra said, this is all kind of culminating now, and we're wanting to act, so.
Gary?
You all talked a little bit about giving notice to the kids who are going to be moved back into the neighborhood schools, to those parents. I'm going to put in a word for the parents of the students who are already there and ask what we're going to do to notify them. I think if I were a parent and I had a student who had some issues, pretty severe issues, I'd want to know how that's going to affect my kid in the regular classroom. And so could we do something for them? I mean, these kids are nothing to be afraid of or anything, but to let them know there's not going to be a disruption in the classroom. Your student will still be in a great learning environment. These students are coming back, and this is the norm. Because I think we owe it to them too, because their students' environment will be slightly changed by the return of these students. So what have we planned to, just other than this meeting and publicity, what are we planning for the other parents?
I think we could easily do something there. We can work through our principals to get the word out about just the restructure, what it means for the building. I'll work with Jennifer on a plan to do some communication down that avenue prior to beginning of next year. Coming out shortly on the ALC, an autism piece of that, but just so that we're getting the whole community involved in that conversation. I appreciate that comment, Gary. We will do that.
Any other questions? I think that's all for now. We'll see you about this. We'll talk about it at the next meeting, right?
Thank you very much.
2 weeks.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is school board reports and upcoming dates of importance, which include Tuesday, October 1st, the KASB Fall Regional Meeting in McPherson at 5:30. Thursday, November 14th, the Smoky Hill Education Service Center Legislative Luncheon, and that's after the election. Smoky Hill Education Service Center is the location, and it's 10 o'clock with as many legislators as we can get to come. And December 6 to 8 is the KASB Annual Conference in Wichita. So Let's start at Gary's end. Go ahead.
All right, I attended Parks and Rec meeting last week. Gabe and I were there. I think Gabe got elected as the chair. I begged off since I'm not going to be there very much longer, but congratulations to Gabe for accepting that responsibility.
I don't know if it's congratulations, but I'll do it.
Congratulations for being willing. The other takeaway from it, I'm not going to talk about specifics, but I think they're going to throw us into school board members having to advise the city commission on issues that are going to throw us into a great deal of public debate, and not something I really look forward to, but we're going to do it. Went to the teddy bear tour at Heartland. I appreciated seeing some old faces that I knew from Heartland in years past, and it's always good. We are so far flung and have so many responsibilities. We're in charge of so much in the district. It's good to get a review of what all they do in all of our organizations. Then last week I went to the CKCIE meeting. Thank you to Mike and everyone for allowing me to attend that on special ed laws and rules. And my takeaway from that I would share with you all is that the administrators from 305 were the smart kids in the class. They were the bright ones. I sat at a table with some 305 people, and we were scattered around the room. And it was really nice to see that when the lady who's an attorney, who I know a little bit, when she was trying to trick everybody, our folks were on to it. And we had some really great responses from our faculty, and it was really good to see that how knowledgeable our people were during that seminar.
Jim?
I attended the teddy bear tour at Heartland, and that's all I've got to report this week.
Okay, Nedra.
I attended Teddy Bear also. It was great to walk around the entire building, which has grown insurmountably large. They do provide the utmost care to all those ages of students that are over there, and it's quite impressive even on a short hour tour. So I'd like to thank them for that.
Okay, Gabe.
Like Gary said, Parks and Rec Advisory Board. It was a light agenda. We were done in 21 minutes, and I told everyone to expect that sort of thing. NEA executive team, Mrs. Exline and I met with them last week. It was a productive meeting as usual. Enjoyed the tour of Heartland and the explanation of all those programs. Great stuff they're doing for early childhood education in our community. And then enjoyed the Teacher of the Year luncheon and honoring both Carly Cuomo and Charlie Todd, along with teachers from all over Region 1 of Kansas. It was a great event.
Thank you. Emma?
Okay, I too attended the Teachers Award, and it was a super event to see all those teachers and all the accomplishments they have made. Also attended the Teddy Bear Care Program, and it's so exciting to see all the activities that happen at that, from feeding to diapering to giving clothes to these children that are in high demand and need, and then attended the Smoky Hill Cooperative Education where they passed the budget. So, thank you.
And I would simply say on the Teacher of the Year luncheon that it was good to hear the addresses by several people, including Whitney Morgan, the current Kansas Teacher of the Year. And it's always an honor to recognize educators in our community. We appreciate so much what our teachers do.
Thank you. I, too, went to the Kansas Teacher of the Year event and was happy to have the introduction by our own Lynn Exline.
Yes.
And the Heartland Teddy Bear Tour. And I wanted to say that coming up on the 24th of October is the Candidate Forum sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. And I believe that will be at the Chamber Annex, also called the Visit Salina Annex, over at 7th Street across from the City County Building. I believe that's all. Let's see. So now we have the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I've had a busy couple weeks. I was able to attend the Council of Superintendents meeting in Topeka, and a couple of things that you just might want to know are out there. One is that the Kansas Board of Regents recently changed qualified admissions criteria. And in doing so, significantly more students will qualify through that qualified admissions process to go on to post-secondary school. So we will be looking locally at what that means for our individual plan of study and bolstering our advisement to make sure that students are making good choices about what they are prepared to enter and what level of post-secondary education best matches their needs and aspirations. And anyway, so just so that you know that those qualified admissions scores did change.
They reduced those.
They did. They reduced them. And actually, I pulled that out here if you're interested. Emporia State, Fort Hays State, Pittsburgh State, and Wichita State, the old was kids had to have an ACT of 21 or be in the top third of the class, and they had to do the qualified admissions curriculum. So there were certain courses, a course sequence that they had to take in order to be able to be admitted. Now, that course sequence is no longer required. What is required is a 21 ACT or higher and a 2.25 GPA. At Kansas State, it was the ACT of 21 or top third of the class, qualified admissions curriculum. Now it is a 21 ACT and a 3.25 GPA. KU did not change their requirements. Okay? So KU, it appears as though KU is the only institution still requiring that qualified admissions curriculum. At the other institutions, that will not be required. And so there are some areas where we really do need to be having some conversations with students about what level of coursework do you really need to have in order to be prepared and do well. We don't want kids going into a situation where they're spending money and not experiencing success. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about is that the Kansas assessments are going out for a redo. And so here in the near future, we will see new Kansas assessments created, adopted. There is some discussion of using the ACT at the high school level. Our board went to the ACT Aspire as an assessment several years ago to try to make sure that we had kind of that longitudinal picture of student success starting at third grade. And you saw this evening that Stewart is using those scores actually for their accreditation purposes. You're going to hear that from a lot of our schools. But there is conversation about using the ACT as that high school assessment. And then there would be something different at grades 3 through 8 is what the conversation is right now. You will recall that KSDE did make available to us and the legislature made available to us the ACT and the ACT work keys for all of our students at high school, but right now that's optional. We had many, many students that took advantage of that opportunity because that is a nice opportunity for them. So moving forward, it may be that all of our students take the ACT and that they would perhaps still have the opportunity on the ACT work keys side. Okay, so that's a pretty significant change that I just want to make sure that people are aware of. The other thing I wanted to talk about is I did have a person called me and asked if he could have a tour with one of his nurses. He runs a retirement center. Asked if he could come and tour our CNA program and our CNA lab, and that has gotten some notice. And wanting to see what we did, how did we set that up? They are looking at trying to partner with a post-secondary institution to try to provide something similar. And so that was kind of fun to brag a little bit on what had happened and what our community had supported through our bond issue. And then finally, enjoyed the South Central football game, the students and the pink out. Very powerful to look and see Salina united in a competitive environment, but the unity in trying to fight for a cure. So that was just a really fun evening, and it was fun to see the kids all in pink.
Thank you. We have a couple of executive sessions, and the first one for personnel, looks like we need about 10 minutes, I believe. So do I have a motion to go into executive session for personnel? Gary?
When do we want to start?
Oh,
22?
Yeah.
sure, well, 20 till.
Okay. I move the Board of Education go into executive session at 6:40 40 for 10 minutes for the purpose of discussing an employee's contractual duties, because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might invade the privacy of those discussed, and the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 6:50 in the board conference room.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Emma Doherty, second.
Emma? We have a motion and a second to go into executive session for personnel. All in favor, raise your right hand. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried 7-0. We will recess until the executive session. If anyone of you want to stick around, you're welcome to. We do have one more executive session after that.
Way to Breckenridge. Oh, my goodness. And I gotta go. I was in the driveway, and I didn't have my watch on or anything. And it said 5:22. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, so anyway. I am too. No, right. So, hey, Ann, I had a cousin from Dallas stop by on their way to Breckenridge, caught me in the driveway. Oh, my God. And I kept saying, I gotta go. And then when, I didn't have my watch on or anything, and then when I did, it was 5:15 or 5:20. I thought, oh, my gosh, give me strength, Lord. So apologize for being late. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.